Modern cities lose water when pumps fail. Rome moved city water before pumps existed, not with engines, not with electricity. Rome fed a capital through channels, tunnels, bridges, tanks, pipes, and maintenance shafts, using one force it could not switch off: gravity. But gravity is not generous. Water falls. It does not climb because a city is thirsty. It does not cross a valley because an empire commands it. It follows height, slope, pressure, and every mistake in the route. Roman engineers did not make water defy nature. They made nature obey a measured path. The aqueduct was not really a bridge. The arches were only the part people remember. The real invention was the controlled fall. A drop so slight the eye could barely see it, but steady enough to move water without a single pump. That sounds simple until the land gets in the way. Hills, valleys, soft ground, sediment, and bad slopes could stall the whole route or tear the channel apart from inside. Rome's water problem began far from the city, at springs and mountain sources high enough to feed the route. If the source was too low, the project was already dead. There was no electric pump waiting to save a bad design. The first decision was height. The second was distance. The third was patience. Engineers had to find a line where water could fall gently from source to city. Too flat, and the water stalled. Sand and grit settled. Too steep, and the flow became destructive. The solution was not speed, it was control. Roman surveyors measured that control before a single channel carried water. Tools like the corabits helped them read the landscape. They were not guessing. They were drawing a future river through stone before it existed. Once the route was chosen, the aqueduct became a chain of controlled spaces. Some sections ran underground, protected from heat, sunlight, debris, and attack. Other sections moved through covered masonry channels. Where land dropped away, arches held the water line high. Where hills blocked the route, workers cut tunnels through rock. The water corridor itself was called the specus. It had to be shaped, lined, covered, and kept clean. Waterproof mortar reduced leaks. Covered roofs kept debris and sunlight out. Inspection shafts let workers clear buried sections. That detail matters. Rome did not build aqueducts as sealed miracles. It built them as serviceable infrastructure. The route needed access because water never stopped attacking the work. Minerals crusted inside the channel. Sand settled where flow slowed. Roots searched for cracks. Illegal taps stole supply. A tiny leak could become a structural failure. Before water reached the city, it often passed through settling tanks. These slowed the flow, so grit could drop out before entering the main supply. The Romans did not understand bacteria the way modern engineers do, but they knew clean water had to be handled. The route also had to protect the gradient. That was the sacred part. Every tunnel, arcade, shaft, and tank existed to preserve the fall. If the line lost too much height too early, the city lost reach. If the line stayed too high where terrain rose, the water could not pass. That is why aqueducts are misunderstood. The stone arches were not built to look grand. They were built because the water had to remain on a mathematical line. The arch did not move the water, the slope did. Every choice was a trade. Stone cost labor. Tunnels cost danger. Detours cost time. Bad gradients cost the whole project. Then came the worst problem. A valley too deep for normal arches. A crossing too wide for cheap stonework. A route where an open channel could not stay high enough without becoming absurd. This is where the Roman solution became more than a water channel. It became a pressure device. People like to say the Romans made water flow uphill. They did not. That phrase sounds good, but it is wrong in the exact place where the engineering matters. Roman water never rose higher than where it started. The trick was not breaking gravity. The trick was using gravity before the climb. This was the inverted siphon. Picture a tank on one side of a valley. A second tank waits on the other side, slightly lower than the first. Between them, sealed pipes dive down the slope, cross the valley floor, and rise up the opposite side. Water enters from the higher tank and falls into the pipe. As it drops, the weight of the water column creates pressure at the low point. That pressure pushes water upward on the far side, not above the starting height, not magically uphill forever, only high enough to reach the receiving tank, because that tank still sits lower than the inlet. Gravity still wins. Rome forced it to do useful work before it finished falling. This changed the problem completely. An open channel depends on a gentle surface slope. An inverted siphon depends on sealed pressure. The pipes, joints, tanks, and low points had to survive forces an ordinary channel never faced. A leak in an open channel wastes water. A leak in a pressure pipe can destroy the crossing. Air, sediment, and weak joints could choke the system where repairs were hardest. So the siphon was powerful, but unforgiving. It needed header tanks, receiving tanks, strong pipe material, careful joints, and maintenance access. In some places, stone channels were easier than the pressure risk of buried pipe. This is the real reason aqueducts worked. They were not one invention. They were a sequence of decisions. Find the high source, measure the route, cut the channel, seal the lining, protect the water, remove sediment, cross valleys, control pressure, divide flow, maintain everything, miss one step, and the rest suffers. By the time water entered a city, distribution tanks divided supply between fountains, baths, workshops, private connections, and overflow routes. A fountain was a delivery point. A bath complex proved the city had surplus water. The aqueduct made dense urban life possible, but only while the whole chain stayed alive. The weakest part of Roman water infrastructure was not the stone. It was neglect. Calcium narrowed channels, sediment gathered, roots entered cracks, pipes leaked, tanks filled with debris. Unauthorized connections stole flow before it reached the public supply. The network needed workers, records, inspections, repairs, and authority. Infrastructure survives because someone keeps returning to it. When Rome weakened, the aqueducts weakened with it. Some were cut by enemies. Some were stripped for material. Some cracked and were never repaired. Some died the slow death of systems nobody had the money, power, or skill to maintain. The result was not just broken stone. It was a smaller city. Fountains stopped, baths closed, water access shrank. Urban life lost part of its circulation. Modern cities are more advanced than Rome. We have pumps, filters, sensors, valves, and chemical testing. But the old warning has not changed. When pumps fail, water stops. When power fails, pressure drops. When pipes are ignored, damage compounds underground. Rome's lesson is not that ancient engineers were smarter than modern engineers. The lesson is that they designed around limits they could not escape. They respected slope because they had no backup. They built access because repair was part of the design. Water infrastructure is never finished. It is only maintained. The aqueduct was a controlled fall stretched across the landscape. Stone held the line, mortar sealed the channel, tanks slowed the grit, pipes stored pressure, workers kept the route alive. No pumps, no engines, no electricity, just height, water, pressure, and a city disciplined enough to keep the path open. Rome did not make water climb. Rome made gravity work for the city.